All right, Nick, let's talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This team looking really strong, and I think recruiting big part of this team's game. Matt Rule doing a lot of really great stuff in the recruiting game, but there's one thing in particular, one team in particular he's targeting that I think is going to be huge for the Cornhuskers going forward. Really going to turn the tide and make this team heading in a different trajectory. We'll dive into all that in just 1 second here, but first. I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Cornhuskers doing some really great work recruiting. We all know Dylan Raiola, one of the biggest recruits to come through Nebraska in quite some time. But what if it got a little bit of extra help? What if there's a big time, big play threat added to this team? 2027 class we're talking about might be gone by then, but nonetheless, they're being able to get some big time recruits roll through here, and that is because they are preying on the downfall of one program in particular. I think this is a really smart move. Talk about the LSU Tigers, of course. Let's get into the article and we can talk about everything on the other side. So this is from SI.com. It says Nebraska's recruiting radar just lit up. Ahmad Hudson, a towering 6'6", 230-pound tight end and consensus 5-star prospect out of Ruston, Louisiana. He's actually number 9 player in the country, number 1 tight end in the country, obviously number 1 player in the state of Louisiana. Has locked in a visit to Lincoln for Saturday, November 1st, 2025, with LSU's 2027 class wobbling, Brian Kelly's tenure over. Hudson's interest in the Huskers could be more than a recruiting win. It might be a signal that the Huskers could be much more favorable now that Kelly has been fired. So great news. They're capitalizing. Good. We've seen good teams go after the highly touted recruits of other teams. We've seen people go after Penn State's recruits. We saw early on in the Alabama Nick Saban departure, teams target them and go after recruits as such there. And I think that's really exciting. But it's even more exciting when you get the traction. It's one thing to go after them, but it's another thing for recruits to respond. And obviously, coming to the visit for the USC game is going to be a big one. But if you look here, I got a couple tweets from Ahmad Hudson's Twitter. And for him to come out here and talk about Nebraska already and saying some really good stuff, I think that's a great move in the right direction. He says, I've been waiting for this weekend for a long time. Nebraska fans, I'm in Lincoln this weekend. Hashtag Go Big Red. So love to hear that. And this is a repost from Ahmad Hudson talking about Trey Taylor on Twitter. He says, good morning, Husker Football Nation. We talked about the big nasties yesterday. Let's look at the big sexy tight end position. Interesting choice of words for him. But Ahmad Hudson, Cooper Turwell, and Luke Sorensen, there would be no better tight end room in the country. Thank you again at Trey Taylor fan for the edit. Blah, blah, blah. Keeps going on. But nonetheless, talking about the tight end room and saying that Ahmad Hudson addition to this tight end room would be one of the best in the country. Liked it, reposted it. So we're seeing traction. We're seeing a young player say, hey, there's a lot of interest in Nebraska. And I think that this is something that is looking even more likely. We're going to see how the game goes. I think that has a lot to do with it. But we're seeing it build. We're seeing it go. Matt Rule's the master of recruiting. And I think we're seeing Ahmad Hudson slowly getting reeled into the Nebraska sphere here. And I think this is going to be soon a certainty for the Cornhuskers. I think this is a guy they can definitely secure. We've seen them do bigger things before. Like I said, Dylan Raiola, a big-time get for them. I think Ahmad Hudson might be the next big thing at Nebraska, the next huge 5-star big-time player that they could go lock down. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Cornhusker fans, in the comment section below, we've seen a couple coaching fires here over the last couple of weeks. We've seen Florida's head coach leave. We've seen LSU, seen Penn State. Out of those programs, are there any recruits out there in the country that you think maybe can trend over toward Nebraska's way? Are there any guys that those teams able to sneak away from you? Maybe the guys that you thought were really good recruits went to one of those schools that you think Nebraska should target as well, or it could be another school I'm missing. Let us know your thoughts on all of that in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything here for the Cornhuskers?
So I'm about to make Nebraska Cornhuskers fans a little upset, right? Especially older ones. And listen, I'll show my age here. And it's good news, but I think it's a little disappointing. Nebraska's a cool place to go now, it seems. It wasn't the case for a long time, right? For basically most of my college football viewing life, unless you loved defense during that, brief Bo Pelini era, who'd want to go to Nebraska? I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but this wasn't, the 1990s were like the 1990s, right? Yeah, they were good. Yeah, they were awesome. They're one of the dominant programs. And yeah, listen, all the older people would tell me, yeah, Nebraska, they used to be, oh my gosh, they were so good. They were the U. They were the early 2000s Miami Hurricanes in the mid 1990s. I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. But for me, I grew up on the USC Trojans being the force, the Miami Hurricanes being the force. I was an early 2000s kid. I didn't see Nebraska. Nebraska hasn't been cool, generally speaking, certainly offensively, my entire college football viewing life. And for Matt Rule's credit and his coaching staff's credit, they have done something completely remarkable. They've made it a very cool place for recruits to want to go to. That's Raiola. That's Taylor. That's now we're seeing, of course, with Hudson potentially coming into the fold. Have to see how it shakes out there. But it's one of those sort of underrated things about recruiting is you have to make your destination enviable, right? Anytime you're trying to sell a product or sell yourself or sell a service, whatever it may be, right? You got to create the demand for you. If you don't create that demand, it is really hard. Now, as a salesman, that's why a lot of salesmen, what they do is they go to where demand might be, right? If you're selling, I don't know, if you're selling action figures, you go to an action figure convention, right? Something silly like that. If you're a used car salesman, you put yourself in the middle of a major road so that way people drive by all the time. If you're a car lot, you don't put yourself out in the country. No one's ever going to drive by and see you, right? It's one of those things most salesmen, they have to go to where the demand is. What Nebraska has done very impressively is they've created the demand, they've created the attention on their program, and they've made it a cool place to be on offensively. And listen, I'm going to be totally honest, this year hasn't been perfect on offense, far from it, right? Dylan Raiola's had his moments, but look, it looked pretty ugly against Northwestern Saturday. So it's not like they dropped 80 in the past 2 weeks and suddenly, they're Chip Kelly's Oregon Blur offense or anything like that. But somehow, some way, Matt Rule has done it. He's made Nebraska cool, right? And listen, they've got some money, they've got resources, but this isn't Texas where they've got Lamborghinis out front of the athletic department, out front of the athletic building, right? This isn't Oregon with Phil Knight throwing more money than God into the program, right? Nebraska's got some dollars. They got a lot of big boosters, but it's not at the same level as some of these other places. And yet somehow, despite, again, Nebraska not getting a lot of national attention in terms of big media games, they're cool now. We're seeing this from the recruits. Trey Taylor, right, coming into the mix. You mentioned Hudson coming to the mix, just across the board, getting in some offensive playmakers, getting a lot of attention on it. I don't know how they did it. Well, let me rephrase that. I'll tell you how they did it with really targeted advanced recruiting on certain players with the goal that they would attract more talent. Now, listen, that's always the goal, but how they've pulled this off is pretty incredible. Now, listen, I know a lot of Nebraska fans are sitting here. Listen, when's it going to result in a great season on the field? And we'll get to this weekend's game in a second. But look, this Nebraska coaching staff, Matt Rule leading the charge of the program, has done something here for the first time in a very long time, right? This offense, Nebraska Cornhuskers football, is cool, right? And even when they were great in the 90s, let's be totally honest here. I mean, it was power football at its finest. If you loved old school power football, it was awesome. But it wasn't Steve Spurrier's Florida Fun and Gun, which was a fun offense, which was cool. Now Nebraska seems to be the place with the energy and the buzz, somehow out of nowhere. This is a great job by Matt Rule and his staff. It really is phenomenal. A lot of people sit there and they look at certain programs and they think of great offensive minds. Lincoln Riley at USC, for example, right? You can pick a half dozen other ones across the entire country. But what Matt Rule has done with Holgorsen and this staff, I mean, again, no one's giving him any credit. No one on ESPN's talking about him. No one on Fox Sports. We look on social media all the time, every day. All the big talking heads not talking about Nebraska, and yet the young guys want to go there and at least check it out. Again, they didn't grow up on Nebraska winning culture. I missed it, and I'm 15, 20 years older than these kids. It speaks to something, and it speaks to, I think, more specifically, what Matt Rule and what the Nebraska coaches have done on the recruiting trail. Listen, an incredible job across the board, what they've done on that front in a short order without any media attention, without some massive grassroots campaign just to give, Nebraska in front of the limelight, right? It's not like Dylan Raiola's playing well, but it's not like he's a Heisman candidate. And now everyone, it seems, or at least a lot of big names, want to at least check out Nebraska. Times are changing. They've gotten the attention of top recruits. And if they can close the deal, I think in short order, they're going to be an offensive juggernaut very, very quickly. But Miles, if you don't mind, let's transition to this weekend's game. Let's go ahead and pull up the analytics, the predictions for the USC-Nebraska game, because we talk Lincoln Riley, we talk offensive juggernauts, and the Trojans historically, and certainly in recent memory with Lincoln Riley, that's been kind of their goal, to be an offensive juggernaut. And that sets the stage for this weekend. You got USC coming to Nebraska, and ESPN Analytics has the USC Trojans a heavy favorite, 72.1% chance to win, Nebraska 27.9%. Right, if you look at the odds makers, USC opened up as a 6.5-point road favorite. The sports books, the analytics, they like USC. Now, I think some of that strength of schedule. I think some of that is USC beat Michigan handily, and Nebraska lost to Michigan, so they kind of weigh out like that. But I think this is a great opportunity for Nebraska. If they can deliver a win, it really doesn't matter how. If they can get a win against a team that has sort of the definition, the brand of being an offensive juggernaut, of a fun school, of a cool school, then all this recruiting and all this momentum we're hearing, right? Social media, the reports, the articles, I think it's going to start compounding on itself. Matt Rule, Holgerson, this Nebraska coaching staff, and some of the recruits and some of the noise they made, they've started the fire. They've started the momentum. There's some energy. There's some buzz. There's some attention. If the Cornhuskers can come up with a big win this weekend, I think it's going to set off a firestorm of massive energy toward Nebraska, at least on the offensive side of the football. We're going to see the Cornhuskers start stealing talent, not just from LSU, but from Oregon, from USC, from Ohio State. I'm not saying all the talent, but some of it. And once that starts going, it'll be really hard to stop. I think this Nebraska Cornhuskers team, it's not going to be easy. The numbers show how tough it's going to be. But if they can pull it off, and there's a good chance they can, I think it's going to be a heck of a game. They're going to be in a great position for the future.
Yeah, Nick, and I think the key here is what you said there is, if Nebraska can continue this track, if they can be this fun school, if they can get a win over a team like USC, I think this is by far the most important game of the season for them. But I think that it's possible. I think this is a team that, if they continue down this track, like you said, we've talked about it all, off season. We talked about it for the last couple of years following Nebraska. Developmental team, they get young guys, develop them, make them into better players, yada, yada, going down the stretch. If they can start to get the guys that are already developed, that already have all of the talent, that already are prototypical size, have the speed, have the the rankings, have all the stars. Is that what we're looking for? If Nebraska starts to get those guys, watch out everybody else, because we talked about the Matt Rule year 3, and you might look at this season and be like, we lost to Minnesota, lost tight one to Michigan. They've already matched their win total from last year. This is a Nebraska squad at 6-2. They had 6 wins last year, all year. So this is a team on a very good trend. Only 2 losses on the season for them. I think this team's looking better and better, and these are the type of commits you get going down the stretch. If you get one guy here, one guy there, continues, gets that win total up, starts to get bigger wins, that Michigan game, not a factor anymore, got more high-powered offense, you're able to score just a couple more points, win that game, able to go against Minnesota, win that game, going down the stretch. I think Nebraska is looking really, really good, and I think this is a team that is on the trajectory. We've talked about it. Go back to look at any Nebraska video we've done. There's a good chance we talked about the trajectory this team is on, developmental team, what Matt Rule is doing. They're looking really, really strong. And I think this weekend against USC, going to be a big game. We're focused on the game right now, but these kind of recruits starting to have interest in Nebraska, it's going to turn this thing into a rocket ship. If they can start to get these guys, they're going to be a national powerhouse. And not only is it going to be a fun place to go, it's going to be a fun place to start winning a whole lot of football games at as well.